Sticking with the aviation industry, Ryanair, for the first time in its corporate history, is accepting worker unions as they threaten to go on strike. Talk us through Ryanair in the news cycle.
Yeah, it really seems that Ryanair got a little bit nervous because we remember that this year the cockpit union here in Germany was announcing that because of the very bad working conditions, at least what they are saying, Ryanair could see the first strike in the company history. When you talk about German airlines, for example, Lufthansa or former airline Air Berlin or also Condor, all those airlines, they have very strong worker unions, and Ryanair is one of the airlines. They're based in Ireland, and they pretty much didn't have any kind of worker union that had any kind of influence in the company. And earlier this week, Ryanair was also announcing that they would not even recognize that there is a worker union really fighting for better rights. But it seems that pilots are that frustrated, and even though many of them, that's what we are hearing, were really scared to join a worker union, that many of them now did, and that this worker union really has now enough power to organize a strike. A strike would be horrible news for Ryanair at the moment. They have been having very bad news already during the last months. We remember that also Ryanair already had this problem some months ago, and they were canceling thousands of flights because they just didn't have enough pilots, because many of them, saying that working conditions are so bad at Ryanair that they would rather go to another carrier. So now it's going to be really interesting if Ryanair really is going to talk for the first time in the company's history with those worker unions, and if that could mean at the end that we are not going to see a strike. A strike, of course, now before the Christmas days would be horrible. One of my colleagues, I can tell you, traveling tomorrow here from Frankfurt to Spain on Ryanair, he's also worried that maybe he's not going to get his flight because of a possible strike, Jimmy.
Well, we'll watch and see what happens at that airline. Well, let's end this conversation with mergers and acquisitions talk there. Deutsche Telekom has announced plans to take over the Dutch telecom company Tele2 for 190 million euros. How are investors taking this news, Daniel? A quick one.
Well, actually, today, this news was not that much appreciated from the shareholders' perspective, because shares of Deutsche Telekom are actually down with about 1%. In general, when you talk to investors, they do think that this merger with this giant from the Netherlands would make sense. With this merger, Deutsche Telekom would get about 1.2 million extra customers just in the cell phone business, 400,000 with regular landlines, and also who have their internet access with the company. In total, this company is already the number 3 on the market here in Europe. So from the investors' perspective, even though the share price of Deutsche Telekom was falling a little bit today, investors really appreciate this news, and they really think this can make Deutsche Telekom even bigger here on the European market.
All right, thank you very much, Daniel, for your time. It's been a wonderful week working with you. And next week is the week of Christmas. I'm sure you'll have lots of fun. Enjoy the rest of the weekend. And in Asia, markets closed mostly lower on Friday after U.S. markets finished in the red on concerns about the futures of tax reform stateside. Japan's Nikkei 225 came under pressure, sliding 0.62%, but was off session lows. Japan's most recent Tankan survey released on Friday showed large manufacturer sentiment had improved for a 5th consecutive quarter. The score of plus 25 recorded was the highest in 11 years. Across the Korean Strait, the Kospi edged up 0.51% to end at 2,482 points after it lost steam and closed lower on Thursday, despite rallying more than 1% earlier that day. Australian ASX 200 closed 0.24% lower at 5,997 points. The Hang Seng index declined by 1.2% as property and banking stocks slipped. On the mainland, the Shanghai Composite closed 0.8% lower at 3,266, and the Shenzhen Composite ended 0.72%, with technology among the worst performing sectors on the day. And back here in Africa, Stenov Africa Retail Limited says it is refinancing loans to its Frankfurt-listed parent Stenov International Holdings that amounted to about 16 billion rand. That's about $1.2 billion, following an accounting scandal that has left the German retailer's finances in tatters. First Rand Limited's Rand Merchant Bank has been appointed to handle the refinancing of the shareholder loans and ring-fence funding facility for Star. The financing structures to be created by RMB will be used to repay Stenov's holder loan funding and provide Star with standalone financing facilities. Stenov's chairman and largest shareholder, South African billionaire Christo Wase, stepped down as the chairman of the board on Thursday. Stenov says Wase, its top shareholder and chairman, who stood in as chief executive last week, had offered to step down to reinforce independent governance and address any possible conflict of interest. And Sub-Saharan Africa faces a potential debt crunch unless commodity prices improve and boost the pace of economic growth. This is according to the International Monetary Fund. The fund says the region's median government debt level will probably exceed 50% of gross domestic product this year, from 34% in 2013, while the cost of servicing the liabilities will average almost 10% compared with half that 4 years ago. According to IMF, commodity returns have dropped in 6 of the past 7 years, and expectations for slower growth in China, the biggest consumer, don't bode well for African nations that depend on mining, crops and oil for the bulk of their income. When we come back after the break, we get to know what the IMF has to say about the Zimbabwean economy. To stay with us.